Allora, andiamo alla tavola rotonda che ci
So
accompagnerà per
now,
questa prima
moving
parte dei
on
lavori per
to
tutta la
the round
mattina
table that will essentially take up the rest of the morning. So we shall hear different experiences, starting from the people who are here with us. Some are connected remotely. Lucia Silva, Head of Sustainability for the Generali Insurance Group. There she is. Welcome. Pleasure to have you with us. Mauro Gallavotti, CEO of Celli Group. Francesca Mariotti, Director General of Confindustria. Chicco Testa, President of Assoambiente. Graziano Verdi, Managing Director and CEO of Italcer Group. Wachira, co-founder and CEO of the Big Thunder Mining. And connected with us, Paolo Bonassi, Executive Director Strategic Support for Intesa Sanpaolo. And also connected with us, Andrea Rustioni, Director General of IGP Decaux, and Giovanni, Sandri, Country Head of BlackRock Italia, who will connect with us later on. So let's kick the panel off. We have some 10 minutes per speech. There will be a counter, and then we'll go round once more rapidly for some final considerations. So I'd start with a question to Paolo Bonassi, Executive Director Strategic Support at Intesa Sanpaolo. Good morning, welcome. Can you hear us? Yes, I can hear well. I hope you can also hear me well. So we started mentioning already in the introduction the important role of finance, of banks in guiding investment and helping companies in this transition. Now, I'd like to ask you, how do the ESG targets, how do the UN goals translate into reality in a bank? Because banks are not particularly a high energy consumer, but how can you behave to achieve those 17 millennium goals?
First off, good morning, everybody, and thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to be with you, even if I'm just simply connected. But thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to take part in this forum. Well, I think that for us, being sustainable is actually about, going beyond mere statements or labels. It's rather something that is focused on a pathway that is based on actions, daily behaviors, which of course find their roots on specific company policies, a perception of what we are doing, of our pathway. Intesa Sanpaolo started this pathway some time ago. Our attention to this topic is nothing new at all. Sustainability has always represented a basic principle, a source of inspiration in our way of being a banking institution. It is something that has always been in the DNA of our bank. It is based on the story of our group and on the fact that we have always been very close to the areas in which we have our branches. And this is also strengthened by our shareholders. We have a very close relationship with our shareholders, and we share our initiatives with them as well. Now, in the past, we focused in particular on social issues, while over the past few years, we have started to broaden our horizon. Now we're also focusing on other objectives and targets, climate targets, environmental targets. Sustainability is the real focus of our strategy today. Just to give you an idea, last year, with our company plan, with our business plan, we've also included the topic of sustainability as the fourth pillar of our business plan, together with the usual targets, costs, risk prevention and profit. But we have also developed a new formula, so to speak, to focus on these concepts which are the very basis of sustainability. So first and foremost, the support to the local communities in order to cater for the social needs, allocating 500 million euros to support people in difficulty, especially elderly people, students, and the needy families, and also allocating 25 billion euros of credit for the third sector. Now, this is our commitment, which has been a tradition for our company. For instance, we also promote culture, we support museums, we promote innovation, the development of ecosystems, supporting startup companies, and also our commitment towards climate and environmental objectives and targets, moving towards net zero emissions in order to be in line with our commitments in the credit field, asset management, and insurance. Finally, our support to our customers to promote the transition towards environmental sustainability. So, self-funding, that is supporting new credit lines, circular economy, etc., but also investments with a broader range of products of asset management which can be instrumental in order to promote sustainability. In particular, I'd like to stress that sustainability for us is not just something that we do on the sideline. Just the opposite, it is a central element, and not just because we are focusing on this topic, our CEO is doing that, but also because we have a very specific approach in dealing with this. I spoke about our strategic plan before, and I also mentioned a series of policies which are an integral part of our business plan. Well, these are words, but behind these words there are also specific project initiatives. And these project initiatives are focused on very specific quantitative objectives, KPIs. And we perform a 3-monthly monitoring of this approach. So basically, our approach is exactly the same that we follow for any other more commercial initiative. Let's go back to the market. Let's speak about the market approach. Has anything changed in the rating assessment of the individual companies? I mean, sustainability, the fact that we have now green pathways, the fact that some companies have already been able to reach net zero emission. Does it improve the rating for these companies so that credit costs less for these companies? Yes, of course. When it comes to the companies, we have launched a series of initiatives aimed at supporting these businesses in their pathway towards sustainability, good governance, sustainable pathways, etc., and also supplying them specific projects to support sustainable economy and to reduce the environmental impact. And we're also supporting them, also giving them new credit solutions and financing solutions which reward virtuous behaviors. So we want to be close to the businesses in this pathway towards sustainability, also by organizing meetings in which it is possible to focus on the ESG topics in what we call the ESG laboratories or workshops, which are basically workshops in which people, business leaders meet. We have already organized 10 such workshops. Many more will be organized throughout the country, in which it is possible to give consultancy to these people when it comes to the ESG. Now, answering your question, the process of allocation of credit has been simplified. This is one of the key processes for our bank. And it has evolved, this process has evolved also in order to cater for the needs in terms of sustainability, so that this can be done as a function of the ESG profile of the companies and also on the basis of the projects that have been launched by the company. So this is an example that shows that our bank is developing a sustainability pathway in this transformation approach. Our way of being a bank has changed. Our relationship with the customers have changed. And we have worked in order to support transition policies which take into account the needs of the customer and their interest in the long term. In just 30 seconds, by 2030, are you going to cut your emissions or reach net zero emissions in just 30 seconds? Yes, absolutely. As I mentioned in our plan, we have launched a series of objectives in order to reduce emissions. We have also established new metrics, new targets, and this is something we will work on in order to reach these objectives, also thanks to a series of alliances, key performance indicators at the European level. Thank you very much, Paolo Bonassi. Thank you very much. I hope you can stay with us. We will have the opportunity to talk to you later on. Lucia Silva, Group Head of Sustainability and Social Responsibility for the Generali Insurance Company. Now, the energy manager is an emerging role in these companies. That is the manager of the digital transformation, and then there is a role like yours, Head of Sustainability and Social Responsibility. What do you do in your day? What does Group Head of Sustainability and Social Responsibility, what do you do? Yes, thank you for this question. Thank you very much. It is a pleasure to be here in person on this stage. It's really emotional for me. What do I do? What does a sustainability manager? What does a sustainability manager do? Well, we talk to the people who manage the supply chain. We talk to the people who manage our suppliers to integrate sustainability in their decision-making process. For instance, when I have a colleague, our chief investment officer, when they invest in counterparts, they have to assess not just, of course, the remuneration of capital, but they also have to consider the impact on people and on the planet. They have to assess how the ESG, environmental, social and governance factors, can create or destroy the value of our investment. For instance, let's continue on the example of investments. We have what we call the ethical filter. That is, a set of rules according to which some companies are companies we can invest on, others are excluded. And they are excluded because there is also a risk management problem. So we do that also in the best interest of the people who believe that we are a good intermediary to manage their savings. It has been shown that those companies that have a low ESG profile are more risky companies. And even recently, I have to say that after the latest international scandals, we have been able to protect and safeguard the capital of our customers because we had this ESG filter. So my job is to help my colleagues to understand how this topic is important and how these ESG filters are important in order to create value for our customers, for our stakeholders at 360 degrees. I have to say that over time, I've been working in Generali since 2015. At the beginning, there was some resistance, also cultural resistance. We're all growing when it comes to sustainability. And I have to say that the sustainability manager can give his own contribution thanks to this new mindset, a new approach to judge the value that we create on the basis on people, planet and profit. Now, in your organization and in the workflow, you also have other variables when you talk to your customers and with the managers also. I mean, investment managers already have to work on 25,000 KPIs, and somebody tell you that there are new KPIs to add, right? So, what is the power you have when it comes to these KPIs? Well, we have grown also in terms of awareness. I joined Generali in 2015, and at that time there were already some policies, some internal rules. Now, I've tried to create a specific channel so that it's not just up to the chief investment officer that is contacted by me, but it's just the other way around as well. They contact me because there is a higher level of awareness by professionals within Generali, but I have to say that this is something that is happening in all the big corporations, but also in small companies. Today, there's not just the person who does investments and the person who deals with insurance, the person who deals with human resources. They focus on sustainability as well. Let me give you an example. A person who deals with HR must always deal with equity inclusion. They have to deal with employability. That is the ability of a company to keep their employees updated so that they can always have better opportunities to find a job. So this is a component of any professional and not just of the sustainability manager. So the sustainability manager is a facilitator only. There are two things which I think are interesting in your structure. I think you work with 10 people in your structure, right? So it's not a label, sustainability. You work with people promoting sustainability. But what is even more important is this. In the past, the sustainability manager exclusively worked on communication. Now you also talk to the general management of the company. In the past, the environment was about communication. I don't want to say that it was just about greenwashing, but it was about communication to the external world. Today, it is something that you do from within the company, right? Well, as a matter of fact, the company has been doing that. I reported to the communication manager, now I report to the general manager. And this was the consequence of the fact that in the two strategic cycles, sustainability has become an essential strategy of Generali company. And in the latest strategic cycle, sustainability has been called the originator. What does it mean? It means that the ambition is to include environmental, ESG, considerations in all the decisions that we make in our company. Of course, this is a pathway. It is a trouble because, of course, sustainability is a point of departure but also a point of arrival. Our organization has been working on the central role of sustainability, and my function now is such that I report to the general manager. When I'm asked how many people work with you, well, actually 84,000. That is the number of people who work for Generali. Sustainability is something that everybody deals with, not just the head of sustainability. Sustainability is something that can happen if and only if the leaders, the professionals, and the staff manager, but also the employees work at that. Employees on an everyday basis can decide whether they can print a document, whether they can recycle plastic and all the rest of it. We live in a pervasive society, and this is a topic that we should consider as our own challenge for the future in order to give a contribution for a better future. What are the difficulties in your structure in order to transmit these concepts? You mentioned investments and some barriers. There might be a profitable investment, and then you're told, no, you can't do that because of sustainability. And so I imagine that the manager might not be happy if they are the ones who have promoted that investment. The KPIs are not just about sustainability, but also about the money they can make. Well, I think it's important to align remuneration and sustainability targets. So, when a group decides that sustainability is an important part of their strategy, well, of course, this is something that must have consequences on the organization as a whole and on the remuneration as well. For some time, we have linked the sustainability objectives to our own managers' objectives and targets. Of course, it's not easy when we talk about sustainability because sustainability is about transformation. So we are challenging a status quo where people are accustomed to thinking in a specific way in their comfort zone. My work and the work of the managing director and of the board of directors is to push the organization so that it can evolve. And it is very important to hear what the leaders of the company have to say. Claudia Parzani spoke about the importance of the leaders. It is important for the leaders to send out a very clear signal to the whole of the organization. Proper value can be created if there is financial value, but also a positive impact on people and on the environment. What are the sectors that have to be stopped because they are not sustainable at all? It's not easy to speak about this. Anyway, we can focus on coal, for instance. Some stakeholders, some new stakeholders talk to us. Some non-profit organizations have contacted us. Actually, this happened some years ago. We talked to them in a very constructive manner. And they helped us to better understand the negative impact of coal on the environment and to promote policies to engage the companies, if you see what I mean. We do not want to exclude companies, we want to engage the companies. Our economy is, of course, still based on fossil fuels. This is not something that can be changed overnight. So we have to accompany our counterparts through these transformation, setting rules and also focusing on clear future perspectives. And we have done this with coal-focused companies, especially in Eastern Europe. Some of them were not able to give us clear indications on their transformation, so we had to forget about them. Thank you very much, Lucia Silvia. Now, Francesca Mariotti, General Manager of Confindustria. Francesca Mariotti, General Manager of Confindustria. We spoke about, and also Mr. Marenghi spoke about that, we spoke about the difficulty we've been going through. We spoke about the first edition in 2018. Everything has happened. All the crises that could be hypothesized in 2018 actually happened, even worse. So, industrial production data for 2023 are not particularly good. It's not a collapse, but probably minus 2 to 3%. So this means that we are still in a very complex situation. So let's start from here. What are the conditions of the company? How can they deal with this double transformation, green and digital? First off, thank you. Thank you very much. And I'd like to join the Deputy President Marenghi. Confindustria is an integral part of this meeting. I would also like to thank Letizia Moratti, the soul of this initiative, of this meeting. So, what is the current state of the art? Well, the situation now is quite critical, quite difficult. As we all know, the scenario is critical indeed. And I'm somewhat optimistic, and I like to absorb the optimism of the previous speakers, but the scenario is still quite difficult. 2022 was a difficult year when it comes to costs in particular. And I'm referring in particular to the cost of energy, but not just the cost of energy. Also other costs have increased. As it was mentioned before, the Italian industrial sector, the Italian companies, the Italian businesses has been structurally solid. It has been able to resist with exceptional performances compared to other European partners, for instance, France and Germany. I strongly believe that the ability the Italian businesses have shown depends on structural factors. It does not depend on contingency, but on structural factors. Structural factors which have become even more solid over the years, probably even starting from the previous crisis, for instance, the 2008 crisis. Now, these crises, in a way, allowed the Italian businesses to become more solid, to understand how to resist to these crises. Many people spoke about permanent crisis. I think that one of the positive elements, and probably I think it is worth mentioning this, it was the ability the Italian businesses have had to focus on export and to promote its excellency when it comes to exports. This is a structural factor. As a matter of fact, we see that businesses have their diversification on the basis of their products. Unlike the situation in Germany, for instance, in which many companies are focused on specific sectors, and when there is a shock, when there is a crisis, this is a problem. Diversification also in the value chain. The Italian businesses promote diversification in the supply chain. And also, another important element which I'd like to stress is the quality of our products. The Italian businesses, the Italian industrial sector over the past few years have focused on the improvement of their products. The Italian companies are becoming an excellence sector. It has always been the case, but there has been an improvement over the past few years. And this has made it possible to reach very high level of exports, plus 13.8% in 2022 compared to 2019 at constant prices. If we were to think about the value, it would be enormous. The increase would have been enormous. But anyway, there was a considerable increase in the export compared to 2019. So, from 2007 to 2020, the Italian manufacturing sector underwent a very deep crisis, because in this 13-year period we lost 24% of companies. There was a dramatic reduction in the number of Italian companies, minus 24%. This is something that has happened over in Germany, but they started from a higher level. This did not happen in Spain, and this did not happen in France. What is positive about this, because of course there is always a positive consequence when these crises happen, is that the decrease in the number of companies has been accompanied also by a decrease in the size of the existing companies. So we see that there has been an increase in the size of the companies, so that the companies now can have a better performance also when it comes to export. One last thing, which probably we should say last but not least, and this is something that is appearing in this situation of crisis, is of course the energy crisis. A very serious crisis. The Russia-Ukraine conflict, of course, has worsened the problem. It has not been the factor that started the energy crisis. The energy crisis was there before the conflict, but it has, of course, worsened the energy crisis. And this energy crisis, of course, is causing problems. The gas price has gone down since last summer. There's been a considerable reduction in the gas price, but we've not gone back to the levels of 2019. And this, of course, as you might very well imagine, has led to inflation. Even if the gas price has gone down, this is causing problems to investments. Now, in this very complex picture, Europe is raising the bar of sustainability. Now we have a plan for emission reduction. There is also a change in the sources of energy, the development of alternative energy sources that can lead us to reduce our dependence on other countries. So Europe and businesses. Of course, if you don't do anything, of course, this can be a problem. So we can say that if there are too many problems, we don't know what to do. What vote would you give Europe? What has Europe been doing? Well, not much. The European approach probably has not been as it ought to be. Somebody spoke about the amount of investment that is needed. According to our estimates, more than 1.1 billion euros of investments in Italy only. If we consider the National Plan of Resilience and Recover, 220 billion, it's nothing, a drop in the ocean. So money allocated on in a continent and in a country like Italy that is extremely fragile from their geopolitical point of view. You see, the amount of resources that have been allocated, for instance, in America, in the United States of America, or in China, in order to support the environmental transition, the green transition, was, of course, much higher than the amount allocated in Europe. Europe should adopt a joint solution for all the countries. This is the problem. The fact is that the member states of the European Union are doing whatever they want. Each country is adopting its own reaction measures on its own. And by doing this, we are probably destroying what we have been creating over the past 70 years, that is the common market. The common market, the market of the European Union, is something that we should safeguard, and the European industry as a whole should be safeguarded and protected. There are some new elements, something new is happening. You mentioned before the sources of concern of the industrial world, agriculture, machine producers, the various regulations that have been approved. But now there are some reviews also, financial allocations coming from different sources, including the reassignment of a part of the National Resilience and Recovery Plan, and Confindustria has already talked to the Italian government in order to approve some measures, Repower EU, in the framework of Repower EU, with allocation of resources and remodulation of some chapters of the National Plan of Resilience and Recovery.
Thank you very much, Francesca Mariotti.
Now, Mauro Gallavotti, CEO of Celli Group. It's a company that in a few years became an international leader. It's a company that exports 80% of its production in drink suppliers with 1,000 employees and 9 production plants. Speaking earlier on, you were telling me, well, we're thinking about adding an energy manager. So what considerations have you made, and what led you to making that possible decision? Well, thank you, of course. Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. Well, the answer derives from our story. Historically, we were founded in 1974, 5 kilometers from here, so a small Italian company that over the last 10 years, since 2013, has grown rather conspicuously, and thanks to its far-sighted investments, takeover, there was an Italian fund, now there is a participation by an international fund called Ardian, and the vision was that only 5% of drink consumption is provided to supply equipment, the rest, 95%, via single-use containers, cans usually, or bottles. Of course, single-use containers have a massive environmental impact, not only because they are very often dispersed in the environment, but because of the CO2 and water footprint they generate. So Behind this idea to offer distribution systems for a more sustainable model of consumption, we have underpinned our growth. So let's say that the company's own offering is part and parcel of its growth path. And we have also wondered how to be sustainable within, not only how to help others be sustainable. So we started thinking about how promoting alternative ways about things. And now we're seeing a sizable impact when it comes to water, because we are founding partners of the European Umbrella Initiative to create, raise awareness around water sustainability. And in Italy, we have seen a lot of contradictions. It's high water consumption water with the highest per person water consumption in Europe, but we don't drink tap water, because we are the biggest consumers in the world of bottled water. So plenty of contradiction. And we said, well, in addition to our offer of products and services, maybe the way in which we promote business, or we are a business, needs to change. Hence, a number of strategic choices. We have tried in our professional life to be vertically integrated. So we have computer manufacturers. We have invested in a plastic molding company because we want to have that raw material under control as well. So we want to work with organic plastics, plant-based plastics, and then downstream we also provide technical assistance in many European countries, precisely with a view to being more sustainable also in our way of offering an alternative, which is already more sustainable in and of itself. So we have the sector's most important IoT network, which also allows us to streamline our assistance activities and also to extend the useful life of our plants and systems. So given this approach to business, we thought that having someone coordinating sustainability aspects was also very important. Let's also add that sustainability is not just environmental. We also pay a lot of attention to social sustainability. So this person will have to be very active in liaising with HR and sustainability managers or directors already present, because of course they need to tally. Now, speaking about social sustainability as well as environmental sustainability, you also carry out projects with this community hosting us here, San Patrignano. Yes, we are very proud to support the community. Some of the people who leave the community we hire because we think it is a positive contribution we can give, helping reintroduce them. And we've also been active in welcoming some families fleeing the war in Ukraine. So as a company, we try to do our part when we can. Now, another important part of your activity is associated to technology. So, digital technology, drink distributors. Well, you think about the old economy. You press a button, you get your drink. Now, that's not quite what you're doing, because you're doing very different things. You're also selling throughout the world, for example, to PepsiCo, some products which are highly technological, not merely mechanical ones, right? Well, yes, we offer technologies to major leading beverage companies. So we partner with large beverage companies in the world, but also with local ones, smaller ones. So our company is, let's say, a small multinational. So our 9 plants are in Italy, the UK, Spain, but also with commercial offices in all European countries. And we also operate on all continents. And we work on process innovation for all major beverage companies. So we work with those companies that have a twofold model, because they offer their beverages, their drinks in single-use containers, but they may be key players in a transition and in inducing the change in terms of consumption patterns. So we try to make our offers increasingly competitive for our clients compared to single-use containers. Digitalization can do a lot. Now, just to make an example, if you are exercising in a gym using a smartwatch, think about a machine that congratulates you and then motivates you to reintegrate based on the physical activity you have carried out, certain salts, mineral salts, or etc., and also suggests tastes, the flavors that you like best. The bottle you have is 750 ml or half a liter or a liter, and it would distribute the drink you want, made expressly for you at that point in time, and accepts any forms of payment with a disintermediation of the chain, where the physical container forces you to have this or that drink. So our clients can also create a totally different go-to-market models. Now, this may sound like science fiction, but it isn't. These are machines and equipment that we are currently already installing in the United States with major companies in the beverage sector. We have also installed them in Europe. In Expo Dubai, there were some such machines providing drinks in bottles, reusable bottles. So in some cases they were also branded. So we created a connection between the brand offering the beverage or the drink and the final consumer. So digitalization can lead to benefits and advantages when it comes to value proposition, both to clients, to our clients, and to final consumers and users, using data that companies are increasingly working on and making their focus. Now, Francesca Mariotti mentioned before the export last year, it was 620 billion. That was a record. Now, for 2023, how's it going? How is 2023 going compared to last year? Yeah, we're doing fine. We finished 2022 with the plus 25% on 2021. This year, we came from very tough and difficult years, of course, because with COVID, with lockdowns and smart working weighed a lot. So this year is a sort of consolidation year. So our growth is single digit as an objective in our budget. But we're happy with the growth path we have followed, despite the very difficult predicament where the overlapping of crisis on crisis represented a particularly tough challenge. Thank you very much, Mauro Gallavotti. Now we should have with us Andrea Rustioni, Director General, CEO of IGP Decaux. Can you hear us? Yes, good morning, and thank you for inviting me to participate in this forum. Now, thank you. Let's speak about communication. Your company is a leader in external communication. When you walk around the streets in a city and you see a poster or big text, big advertising, it's likely there. So now I would take it from there. Speaking of communication, from your vantage point, from your point of view, if you were to tell us what you see in the world. Well, going through newspapers and magazines, I discovered that sustainability is nearly everywhere. Can you confirm? Is that also the case for you? Has the way companies communicate changed? Well, definitely so. Definitely, yes. Today, this is a horizontal topic. There is an exponential increase in demand by our clients, demand for ESG products or products which can be associated to the company's ESG strategies and policies. And our medium is by definition very suitable for this type of strategy because our origins, our DNA, our vocation is to provide services to cities and citizens to make public open spaces better for them. We are usually rightly seen as an advertising company. That's true, but first and foremost, we are an industry that designs, manufactures, provides and maintains public utility services which are then funded via advertising. So the process, this virtuous process entails cost zero for the communities, and it is a mechanism which very often allows cities to obtain services which I will tell you about later, but also to obtain financing which improve our cash flow, because then the transport companies reinvest those profits in sustainable transport, for example. So that's our mission. Growth strategies, the many projects we are currently implementing in Italy and abroad are characterized by this interaction between ESG and the rest of our activities aimed at improving life and the livability of cities, if you allow me the term. Our company was founded in the 1960s when bus stops emerged, with the little roof to protect you from the rain. So it started in the banlieue in Paris, and the idea was to gift that protection, that protecting roof, in exchange for the possibility to sell advertisements. This idea grew over time. These objects became more complex, more commonly used. Very often people are not aware that some of the objects they normally see in cities have been conceived, manufactured, and maintained by a company selling advertising. One case in point, toilets, public toilets, which appeared in France first, and now we have hundreds in Italy as well, in Milan, Turin, Naples. In that case, the toilets do not provide advertisement, but they are funded via advertisement we place elsewhere. So this is very often unknown, but now major brands are asking us visibility, metrics, KPIs on these elements so that we can certify that we have carried out a communication campaign. They bought advertising characterized by this element of sustainability. So we expect an exponential increase in this type of demands by major brands, but this is also going to trickle down to smaller brands and also to more local brands. So for us, sustainable development is an economic and social growth leverage that will definitely open up new opportunities, new possibilities. We are vertically integrated, as I said, so we design, manufacture, position and then maintain a number of products, the products that we also manage. So these are usually elements that contributed to urban landscaping and we have contributed to improving the quality of the environment and of social life. We have adopted an agenda called JSC Decaux 2030 Agenda, focused on products around 14 of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, and the strategy includes a number of solutions like the bus shelter, the toilets that I mentioned, but also information systems associated to these objects, such as, for example, the interactive elements that were recently installed in some Italian cities at the bus shelter, providing also information services. But we also define a specific time frame, defining some benchmarks starting in 2019, focusing on all three pillars: environment, social, and governance, defining some specific targets which we measure every year to define to what extent we have achieved our objectives. And to conclude, as one of the other speakers mentioned, we have also introduced an ESG manager to help us sort of compile all our projects together in the same place and then provide these metrics which contribute to our sustainability report. Now, a market-related question, since we're all trying to figure out how 2023 is going to go in terms of growth. The government's estimates have been slightly corrected upwards, but we're talking about 1%, different from previous years. Fortunately, not a negative trend, but in terms of advertisement, it's an important indicator to understand where businesses funnel their investments. So your impressions, it's now mid-April, in terms of orders that you have for the next few months. How do you see the future? Well, as said by the previous speaker, we have had a rather difficult 3 years, the hardest 3 years our company has lived through ever. Since we deal with external advertisement connected with public transport, well, there was a very, very difficult time for us when people were invited to stay at home. So exactly 3 years ago, slightly prior to that, our commercial portfolio had a very positive, satisfactory trend, and all of a sudden it went down to zero in a company where the business model is to pay wages, to provide services. The bus shelters had to be maintained, put in place, cleaned, managed, etc. So those 3 years were really, really terrible from all points of view. And then with the gradual reopening, the market, of course, has bounced back, but we haven't gone back to pre-COVID levels in terms of advertisement, for example, even though in recent months the recovery has been very marked. 2022 had 40% growth over 2021, but you know, it's really pointless to speak of growth because the levels were so low. But now the growth is below 10%. Also for us, it's 8%. But we must also say that the first term finished with 20% higher, with the results with results that were 20% higher than last year, first term as well. So we're hopeful. We're hopeful because when it comes to our business model, it's very modern, very topical. Our clients want to communicate. They want to communicate projects that are both traditional and associated to the use of new technologies, the use of digital instruments and other creative solutions for outdoor external advertisement. Had you asked the same question in fall 2022, the answer would probably have been a bit more cautious because with COVID and the war and the increase in raw materials and energy, let's say the forecasts for the new year wouldn't have been too optimistic. Whereas the way things are, we have a mildly optimistic approach. We are observing desire by companies to communicate, to grow, to go back to growing, to communicating projects they have kept in the oven for a few months. So we are still mildly optimistic. Given all that. Thank you, Andrea Rustioni, CEO of IGP Decaux. Now, Giovanni Sandri should also be connected. Back to speaking about funds, finance, capital. He is country head of BlackRock Italia. Can you hear us? Yes, thank you very, very much. Thank you for the invitation, although unfortunately I can be with you only remotely. So you manage $10 billion assets in the world, over 100 billion in Italy, if the figures are updated and correct. So how can finance help, support, or maybe also guide? As I said, maybe guide the transition, the green transition towards decarbonization and sustainability. So you have sizable resources available to you. How can you guide investments in this way, and what results can you achieve?
Well, we manage 10,000 billion, which are not our own. It's an investment on behalf of the customers we represent, which can be institutions, pension funds, but also families and individuals. So our work is not so much to funnel the investment, but rather to explain where there are risks and where there are opportunities, give information as clear as possible to our customers on behalf of whom we invest, and we try to do our best following the indications we receive from them. This is the reason why BlackRock has been talking about sustainability quite a lot over the past few years. It's not just an ethical matter, but it all starts from a simple observation. Energy transition is a fact. Climate change is a fact. We are experiencing a very complex transition, a long-term transition, which we know will take decades to be completed. But it's not just complex. There are also opportunities. Energy transition, and this is what we tell our customers, is, on the one hand, an element of risk, so we cannot ignore climate change. A communication was published some time ago. Climate risk is an investment risk, so you cannot ignore climate change because it has an impact on the vast majority of the productive activities throughout the world. It can be a direct impact or an indirect impact. But on the other hand, there is an enormous investment opportunities, and the numbers are huge. Let me mention the Italian energy agencies, 120,000 billion investments from now to 2050 in this process of decarbonization. So it's an enormous amount of money with enormous business opportunities which will grow and will be developed in the future. We are deeply convinced that the next 1,000 unicorns, the startups, are the companies that will promote innovation in the field of decarbonization. And it's also an opportunity for the more traditional companies, not just for innovators or startups. It is an important opportunity also for governments. Suffice it to mention the infrastructures, the link between infrastructures and energy transition. energy infrastructures, which can be the ones for the transition towards clean energy, but also energy security. And all of this represents an enormous opportunity for investments. Now, we are deeply convinced of that, and today this is also strengthened when we observe what we call green energy race. It's a sort of competition among governments. Suffice it to mention what the United States of America did with the Inflation Reduction Act, which introduced enormous incentives for investments in clean energy, and the reaction of the European Union this year's reaction with the Green Deal industrial plan to support the European Union in order to be stronger. Paolo Bonassi has to leave, the Executive Director and Strategic Support of Intesa Sanpaolo. Thank you very much for being with us. I know you have another commitment and you have to leave us. Thank you. Thank you very much. Giovanni Sandri, there is one thing, a sentence written by your chairman: the best investment opportunities will be sustainable innovators that support us in the decarbonization process. Let me understand this. Of course, you talk to the area managers from other countries, and I'm sure you also exchange information on this as well. In Italy, do we have interesting targets from this point of view? I mean, champions of decarbonization and sustainability. Is Italy a good place in order to invest in Italy as well? Well, Italy has an enormous opportunity, and for a series of factors. Of course, the momentum created with the next generation EU. Hopefully, we will be able to take advantage of this. And when I say we in Italy, not as a representative of BlackRock. So enormous opportunities for Italy, and Italy is a part of the world, and it's a part of the European Union, which today is the focus of innovation when it comes to decarbonization. We are fully aware that in this part of the world, decarbonization is a priority together with clean energy. This is the only way to reach energy independence, which is something that has become very important. Italy, as defined by our chairman, is a wonderful platform in the Mediterranean Sea, which can also become an energy hub for the whole of the continent because of its geographical position. The new gas pipes can arrive to Italy in a sustainable way. From the geographical viewpoint, we can promote renewable energy sources, and on top of that, there is also the ability to promote innovation. Italy is internationally recognized as a country that can promote innovation and creativity. Innovation and creativity have always been the focus of the success of our industrial system. When we speak of innovation and decarbonization, probably Italy is the right country to promote this. We should be able, in Italy, to create a system, to act as a system. We strongly believe in public-private partnership. In the context of energy improvement, partnerships can have a very important role to simplify this process and to make better investments for those who look at us. If we're able to do this, it's an enormous opportunity, and I can guarantee that there is much attention today towards Italy, more than I've seen over the past few years. In his letter, your chairman stated that, of course, I have a question for the CEO. How can you have sustainable and long-lasting returns? I'm the investor. Let's assume you have a customer that asks you, which are the sectors I should be investing in? Well, so this is the question I'd like to ask you. What do you think? Well, basically, we invest in many sectors. One of the areas, two areas actually, in which we see enormous opportunities are infrastructures So infrastructures related with safety and energy transition. I'm mentioning both. So energy transition and safety and security in general. There can be a potential cooperation with the governments. And the other topic is innovation about decarbonization and technological innovation. Technology continues to be essential for sustainable transition, but also when it comes to, I don't know, the medical sector, the evolution of the transport sector. So it's something that covers many different areas. Thank you very much, Giovanni Sandri. Chicco Testa, the chairman of Assoambiente, and in the past Chicco Testa was also the president of Enel, the Italian most important energy company. Energy is a topic you know very, very well. I'd like to start from here. We've repeatedly mentioned the policies, the choices of Europe on this topic. So I'd like to ask you whether Europe at the moment can be able to promote virtuous behaviors which companies might not follow without a stronger role played by Europe. Or maybe Europe is making a mess in the sense that the potential for development in Europe are different compared to the United States of America and China. What do you think? Nice question, thank you. We have listened to many speakers, and on the basis of this, we understand that if the companies follow the pathway towards sustainability, this can also improve the competitive approach of the different companies. However, we should always remember one thing. All of this starts from an objective, that is, the reduction of global CO2 emissions. When we speak of CO2 emissions and global warming, well, this is not just like pollution. You can fight pollution locally. CO2 cannot be fought locally. If you reduce CO2 in a country, but it increases in another, you will not get anywhere, no advantage at all. So this means that we have to have a different look on reality if we are focusing on CO2 emission reduction. Mr. Marenghi mentioned this. I can't see him now. Maybe he's not with us any longer. But anyway, Mr. Marenghi this morning said that by 2030, 4/5 of human beings will live outside the OECD area, Africa, Asia, and South America. These countries have unmet needs in terms of energy consumption, which are really enormous. Let me give you a figure. The average consumption of energy units in kilowatt hour in the United States of America is 75,000. In Africa, it is 4,000. In South America, 15,000. In India, 10,000. So there is an enormous difference when it comes to energy consumption, and this explains the inequalities we have in the world. These countries in Asia, Africa, South America, they want to grow, and they are growing. They are growing with very strong percentages, actually. What is the result of this? Well, the result is that last year in the world, we consumed 8 million tons of coal, which is a historical record. Next year, oil consumption will be 100,000 barrels a day. A barrel contains 150 liters of oil. So in many years of activity, I've learned that the only thing that works is the final result. And the final result is that ever since we started speaking about CO2 reduction, every year CO2 emissions have increased. Starting from 1990, we have emitted CO2 of the same level as the emissions of the human beings in all the previous centuries. By 2023, there should be another peak in CO2 emission. Is this due to the lack of willingness? Not at all. This is due to the fact that there is a large part of the world that would like to reach levels of welfare, maybe not as ours, because this might be impossible, but not having to starve, and improving their economic situation as we had, I don't know, in the 1950s or 60s. And this will lead to enormous energy investments. Believe me, even if I like renewable sources of energy, and by the way, I deal with this professionally in my everyday life, cities with 20, 30 million people, Lagos, Nairobi, New Delhi, etc., it will be impossible to give them the energy they need with photovoltaic panels. And in fact, they are investing in coal power stations because it's an easier technology, less expensive, with a fuel source that is more widely available at the moment. So the European effort should be, as Maringhi said this morning, we account for 8%. If we cut our emissions by 20 or 30%, if you make the calculations, it's nothing in the world, especially if the other countries keep growing or increasing their emissions. And of course, we cannot condemn the other countries to stay poor just simply because there is global warming. Now, China is the big emitter, India is a big emitter, but because there are billions of people living there. And if you measure the emissions in India, the emissions are lower than in the United States of America and in Europe. In China now, they have reached the same levels of emissions as in Europe. So, in Europe, we can do something, but we have to be very careful. What we do should lead to some technological advantage, which I can't see as of today's date. In all the sectors of the green technology, technological leadership is the hands of China and the United States of America. We have nothing from the technological viewpoint. We are just starting to create factories of batteries. Enel recently created a plant to produce photovoltaic panels, solar panels, investing and importing from China up to some time ago. Photovoltaic panels from China are produced with an energy which 70% of which comes from coal. So the environmental footprint of a solar panel coming from China is enormous. So basically, we tell a story that is probably different from reality. Do we have a solution to that? Well, the only solution that comes to my mind is to stop giving subsidies and massively invest in scientific and technological research so that we can make a leap forward in terms of technology. So what kind of technology am I mentioning? Well, batteries, other accumulators, the ability to produce hydrogen, nuclear energy, fission and fusion. So technologies which can change the game, because otherwise we will get nowhere at all. Different types of technologies, which were mentioned by the last speaker, Mr. Sandri. Yes, I forgot the name. Let me give you another example, a small example. There was a heated discussion in Italy on the synthetic meat, which is not really synthetic at all, because it's natural meat created in the laboratory from natural elements. So it is called cultivated meat. In the name of food protectionism, that is meaningless. We import more than 50% of our meat from Brazil, Argentina and other countries. So Italian meat is just a minority. Anyway, cultivated meat might be an enormous source of protein for us at zero emissions, because 15 to 20% of total CO2 emissions come from animal feeding. Now, why should we stop this? It's a very important opportunity to reduce starving and reduce also the amount of CO2 emissions. So, Europe can establish objectives, and the objectives established by the EU have been established by 2030. I don't know if you understand this, but when it comes to the decarbonization coming from consumptions, in order to achieve those objectives, those targets, according to a Confindustria study, in Italy, we should have 8 million electric cars by now to 2030. So 1.5 million electric cars a year. It's impossible. So it's really impossible to do that. From now on, we would have to sell 1.5 million electric cars every single year. It's impossible to do that. So it's just a source of frustration. And there is a growing distance between the targets you are setting and what you can actually achieve. The transition will be a process which will take a century. We will reach that, but we need time, we have to be patient, we need investments. 1,000 billion mentioned by Marengo. This amount of money is not available as of today's date, and we need more technology. Those who will find the right technology, the killer application, will be the ones who will give the strongest contribution. And let me give you another example. Allow me to say this. When we speak of green technology, we all use the navigator, the GPS navigator. Have you ever considered a navigator a green technology? Of course not. Well, suffice just mention the hours of driving you save thanks to the GPS navigator. Multiply that by 1 billion cars and multiply that by the cost of fuel. You will have a saving of dozens of billions of liters of gasoline. You see, the contribution of artificial intelligence, automatic systems of organization, etc., can give a contribution to green transition. This is probably more important than many things we are talking about today, just simply because we are not able to understand the contribution of these technologies. Thank you very much, Chicco Testa. Just 20 more seconds. I'm sorry, I was too long. Don't worry, don't worry. Capitano, managing director, the new managing director of Enel. Has anything changed? Can you answer that? With the new CEO? Well, if they take advantage of their assets, thanks to their managerial ability, well, the new CEO and managing directors can work, even if they have two very strong characters, if you see what I mean. Anyway, they are wise enough to live together, hopefully. This is what I hope. Thank you very much, Chicco Testa. Graziano Verde, the manager. Can I ask you, I have to go to Bologna, so I'm sorry, I have to leave. Thank you very much. Thank you. Consumption and energy. Tiles. Italcer Group is a company located in Sassuolo, not very far from here. Recently, they built this company. It seemed to be a mature sector. There were already many companies producing ceramic tiles, but this company has grown 355 million turnover. Ceramic tiles, of course, might cause a problem in the sense that together with paper and some chemical work and need gas ovens, which of course have to be used in order to process clay and transform them into tiles, so they consume quite a lot of energy. So let's start from here. You purchased new ovens and you purchased new presses. You also changed the thickness of the tiles. All of this have been important, right?
Well, the results have been important because by making the tile thinner from 10 millimeters to 8.5, we have cut by 15% raw material consumption, by some 10% energy consumption, and you also reminded the impact of energy gas consumption, but we also use electricity quite a lot. So we have invested substantially in renewable sources. Thanks to an agreement with NAMO, we will have 1/3 of our energy consumption, or electricity consumption rather, from sustainable resources. We are already at some 15%. The group was created in 2017. Already in 2018, we created an ESG manager, and we are very careful when looking at future developments. In recent years, we have brought the level of material recycling that was already some 20% up to 50%. It's currently 52% of recycled raw materials. So if we look at the overall sector compared to marble, when you extract marble, 2/3 are waste, 1/3 is use. As far as we are concerned, the ratio is 1:1. Apologies. With other materials, the ratio is 1:1. In our case, it's 1:2. So we extract 1 and we produce 2. And it's also very efficient. The average duration is 50 years, also because our materials last longer than marbles and stones. What other companies in Sassuolo have done, and you too, is essentially thinning. Reducing the thickness. As Chicco Testa mentioned, it's the case with GPS. You tend to think that technology development is favorable for the environment, but in fact, by thinning, reducing the thickness, it's not just that you need fewer raw materials, but you also improve the logistics, the laying, and everything else. Yes, of course, including transport, because you can deliver 15% more. And since we transport via containers or trucks, and we export 80% of what we manufacture. So, of course, we substantially improve our environmental footprint. We have also worked a lot towards environment sustainability. In 2021, we created some ceramics that maintains the design effect. So we produce design surfaces. We grew so much because our clients appreciated what we did. Architects liked what we did. We also worked on wholesomeness, on health-related aspects. We have managed to allow our materials to be antiviral, antibacterial, antipollutant, so it reduces the NOx emissions by 20% in 3 hours when air is in contact with our materials. So for indoors, for example, there's a lot of pollution that also reaches indoor spaces. Before, one of the speakers mentioned what quality materials can do. So from that point of view, our company in our country has managed to focus on new aspects that also have an impact on the environment of where we live and advance. This new technology we have launched has given a substantial contribution. So another interesting aspect in the way you work is energy recovery. So essentially, the waste you produce is reused almost entirely. To do what? Well, we use quartz, feldspate, kaolins, the same raw materials that make up marble, granite, and stones. But instead of being produced in geological eras, we manufacture them in-house. We process 350,000 tons of these materials, over 50% of which is recycled. So suffice it to think what we can recover. We now recover 99.8% of our production flow. Thanks to new processes, by the end of the year, it will be 99.9%, and by next year, 100%. No waste produced. This is very, very important because it also allows to give more attention to our clients and take a different look on what we do. Well, concerning your clients, that's another important aspect. Trying to understand whether what the companies are doing towards green compliance is only for meeting EU established targets or whether there is more to it. So the fact that you can recover 99.8% of your waste material, the fact that you can tell the market 52% of what we do is recycled material, so we're green. We bought a kiln that uses less energy. So can you charge the market this, or is the consumer ultimately saying this tile costs 10 euro per square meter, this one costs 12, but it's green. You know what? I'll choose the cheaper one. Well, technology innovation has gone hand in hand with design, and the market has been willing to pay more because we were the only ones offering that. As for the rest, there's an amplification of demand. Consumers expect you to provide different materials, so you have to work on processes to become more efficient without hoping that being greener will allow you to earn more money. So what I think we need to really focus on is communication, because young architects, distributors, our retailers around the world who are extremely sensitive to these topics push in that direction. Unfortunately, the older clients are, the less they tend to focus on this. But this has become a must, an obligation. So I think over the long term, this is going to be a benefit, undeniably. So speaking about difficulties, we are here to discuss sustainability, but also business. So of the many critical elements tackled, there was also the one to do with logistics, maybe not so much down to problems in Chinese ports or strikes in US ports, etc., but by the Russian aggression in Ukraine. In particular, the Sassuolo district bought a particularly important raw material, valuable powder from that part of the world. So what happened when the war blocked those imports? Well, 2.5 million tons out of 8 million tons we consume in general. So quite a substantial part. Personally, when I saw tanks in 2021, well, I thought the Russians had been threatening war, but I feared total risk of port blocking. So we worked with ESG management and technical department to change the origin of raw materials. So local suppliers had been ruled out because the raw materials were not as excellent, but still good. So we managed to create a mix between Italy, Turkey, and Germany, where Italy is now taking the lion's share. And we were the only ones, because when the war arrived, our district stopped for 2 or 3 weeks, but we kept producing, working, because we had changed our raw materials in November. So, as usual, when you plan ahead, the benefit becomes visible. So Italian raw materials originally accounted for 20%, and now they account for 50% of our raw materials. How about those supplies from Ukraine? Do you consider them lost, or will they come back? Well, not for a long time, because given the situation, given the constant bombings and the current situation of infrastructures, it's going to take a long time. Thank you. Thank you very much, Graziano. Verdi, CEO of Italcer. Letizia Moratti also mentioned in her introductory speech the need to support other continents in their road towards sustainable development. Thinking about Africa, where there are huge resources in mining and green resources. We have here with us Moses Wachira, who's co-founder and CEO of the Big Thunder Mining, a company which treats macadamia nuts. It's a special type of nut whose oil can then be used for the pharmaceutical industry. The company was created to process these macadamia nuts and to also use the waste byproduct. So the question is,
was already overcrowded in terms of companies delivering this product. Why did you decide to build up this company, and what happened in these years?
Yeah, thank you. I'm happy to be here. Apologies for my addressing. We deal with small-scale farmers, so maybe next time we'll try to be a bit formal. I worked in banking for 16 years. About 6 years ago, I decided to get into agriculture. agriculture contributes about 40% of Kenya's GDP, so it was natural. Around 1972, we had only one macadamia processor. Currently, we have about 40 processors, so waste becomes an issue. And one of the challenges is aggregation of the waste. So anything that is grade B. So what we do is we upscale grade B nuts into oil, and they become ingredients in the cosmetic supply chain and in the pharmaceutical supply chain. Due to challenges that occurred due to the pandemic in 2020, you find almost the industry collapsed, restaurants were closed, airplanes were grounded, the market almost got lost. But then there was a bit of reflection, and we got into a bit of investment by other sectors, and that is how we got into biomass, aggregation and also supply chain, in the biomass space.
Ecco, l'aspetto interessante di questa azienda in Kenya.
So the interesting aspect of this company in Kenya, and if you have time, I recommend you watch this video telling what they do there. It's a 10-minute video, but it's very interesting because it tells you what impact a company may have on the local area. So yes, of course, when there is a company in difficulty, we realize how important it is, but we sort of take it for granted that there are companies that work, create employment, and guarantee wages, allow people to make a living. So now, from 7 full-time employees and 64 seasonal employees during the collection, it's also interesting to notice that there is a cook, the cook feeding the employees, and what this lady tells us, before I had no job, now I do. I have this small restaurant, and my children can study thanks to that. I also hired someone to lend a hand, and this person also earns a wage.
Of your company on the land, because here in Italy we are accustomed to have plenty of enterprises, plenty of works, plenty of jobs. The interesting thing is what happens in Kenya, in a small village, when you open up a single facility with 10, 20, 30 workers, but this has a huge impact on the community.
Yes. Yeah, technically, if you look at the average land holding in Kenya is a farmer has about 3 acres of land. And when you look at the macadamia supply chain, a farmer has about 5 trees. So they're able to process, or they're able to generate about 500 euros in a year from the trees that they have. So we are looking at the entire impact, how we can access all these farmers, how can they get more from in terms of value, because we also have another challenge. About 30% of what is produced by farmers is lost at the farm gate level, just before it's sold to the market, mainly due to immature harvesting, undersized nuts, and farm gate inconsistencies. So that's a factor we are looking at, and that is why we have done backward integration, set up our own factory to buy those undersized nuts from farmers. We press it to oil and get into the cosmetic and edible oil markets.
Do you think that the price paid for your product is fair? Il prezzo pagato è un prezzo giusto, o c'è tra virgolette uno sfruttamento del lavoro locale?
Is it a fair price, or do you think there is an exploitation of local labor, not by you, by the end consumers and by...
It's like a waste product. So you find, if you look at any supply chain in the food sector, high quality material fetches the highest price.
Okay.
If you look at tomatoes, if you look at oranges, and then smaller sizes or whatever is leftover fetches, and it goes now into other processing activities. So you find the prices are usually lower, but the other alternative is the farmer loses it completely. So we are coming in to give the farmer additional income, and then we add value to whatever would have been lost. And another advantage is the other byproduct that comes from it, we sell it as biomass to other processors. In fact, even in our own production, we use the biomass, in our processing activities. So we generate our own heat, and we don't have to buy any other energy.
I've read that you had 7 permanent workers and 64 casual workers.
Yes.
What are your future plans? Quindi 7 fissi, ma 64 stagionali. Gli ho chiesto quali sono i suoi piani futuri.
So my question was, what plans do you have for the future?
We barely scratch 2% of the waste in the market. So if we expand the market to whatever potential it is, and trying to use whatever is lost at the farm gate level, we can grow to 10,000 casual employees and over 300 permanent workers, and reach over 20,000 farmers in the region. So we are really limited, and we are only doing so little in the waste space. If we are able to attract more, also the other part is if we're able to educate farmers better, then farmers are able to categorize their products. Then it is easy to get all the products in the right places and targeting the right entry market into processing.
Ecco, l'ultimo giro di domande e vorrei partire proprio da Moses Wachira.
Now, the last tour of questions, starting from Moses Wachira on special requests. So I would like to ask you whether the government, if the government was to approve a new initiative for sustainable development, what would you suggest?
Your government,
Yes.
Kenyan government, in terms of helping your activity, what would it be?
The main gap we have is in farmer education. Farmers harvest the product. Remember, they are small-scale farmers. They are trying to maximize their income. If you look at any, like a large-scale farmer, they know the various categories of their products, how they move. If we're able to educate farmers, first of all, we register the farmers, then the farmers understand that high-end products or certain high-value products or certain grades attract better prices. Lower grades will attract lower prices, but they still have a market. Then the farmers stop commingling the goods, and then we have better market access in the various categories. The challenge we have is everybody wants to sell at the highest price, even for the lowest grade. And it's an aggregation challenge when you are dealing with many small-scale farmers. So it gives us additional costs, and additional, we have to put in more stuff, but it's something we have to work in the long term. And if the government can assist us in getting it done, it really reduces the capital outflow from businesses.
Quindi farmers. Grazie mille. E tornerei da Lucia Silva, allora se lei dalla sua prospettiva.
Thank you very much. So now back to Lucia Silva. You focus on sustainability and social responsibility in a large company, a large insurance company. So what initiative from the government to help you allocate more resources for that? Well, we mentioned R&D. I think that is the prime focus. Second, also education. Education to sustainability. Sustainability no longer is something that affects or interests sustainability managers, but everybody. As already mentioned, University Bicocca has already made sustainability a horizontal topic, but I would also like to go back to something that was already mentioned. Europe only represents 8%, so we can do what we like, but big action happens elsewhere. Well, I think it is important to launch signals. Unfortunately, it's not just the Europeans, also the Americans, despite the contradictions. A direction has been set. There are 120 trillion of assets of the main people and principals responsible for investment that have decided to focus on sustainability, which has a global reach. So it isn't true that change is only happening in small Europe. Change is happening globally, and it is important to launch a common message so that the big ones who are not aligning realize that the world is moving in a given direction. Another very important topic for me has to do with the possibility of educating people on these aspects. So as far as I am concerned, we have to keep on thinking that these technology leaps can really work the miracle, but it also takes daily work, groundwork, to make sure that happens. Gallavotti? Well, I'd like to join some dots that have been mentioned today. So research and development, as mentioned by Chicco Testa, is of course very important, but we should also remember that many Italian companies are located upstream of the value chain, and also the topic of not giving windfall support and aid. The topic is not just accompany companies in their environmental transition. The topic is leveraging it as a development opportunity for our economies. So we should focus R&D on Italian SMEs located upstream of the value chain in order to generate solutions that support the environmental transition, not only of Italian companies and of European companies, but in other continents as well, because otherwise we'll end up importing solar panels from China. And I think this is a great responsibility we have as Italians and as Europeans to make sure that there is an economic sustainability beyond this. Now, Francesca Mariotti, Director General of Confindustria, what would you tell the government? What would you ask them? Well, to support industry, both directly and indirectly, and in different ways. Of course, R&D is the origin, no doubt about that, but investment, green investment, training and education, we desperately need skills, competencies, diverse skills and competencies. So that would be one of the key elements. But if you allow me, I would also like to add something else. Italian industry is European and therefore world champion in circular economy. We mentioned recycling, someone mentioned reuse of waste products, byproducts, carbon footprint. We have nothing to fear. We have all it takes to look ahead and attain the objectives we have set for ourselves. Andrea Rustioni should also be in line with us, Director General of IGP Decaux. In 30 seconds, if the government were to pass some intervention in this sector, what would be your wish? Well, we are operating in a very small sector in media considering the overall scenario. And we're also pulled by the agenda that in a way imposes some obligations on us. And the group is showing us that it is difficult to work on metrics. So I think there also is a problem in certification. Companies that move in that direction should be supported, but on the basis of value and data, which must be more objective, because at least in our industry, we find that there is still a lot to do in terms of certification of projects that are really aimed at ensuring sustainability. Thank you, Rustioni. To conclude, Graziano, Verdi. Government has to decide something for companies on sustainability. Well, two things. Certainly R&D, as already mentioned, to get there first and to change the processes, to improve them. Fundamental aspect, I would say. On Sole 24 Ore, a few months back, I read some research. I saw that Enel also produces photovoltaic panels, so covering our industrial buildings with such panels would cut nearly 20 cubic meters of the 76 billion of cubic meters we use. So this could be a nice initiative, helping make businesses more competitive. So we would be helping the environment and companies together. Thank you very much for being here with us. We stop now. We will start again at 2:20 to hear more from our companies and other speakers. Thank you.